On a warm Sunday in 1982, three identical brothers posed for a church picnic photo on the grass behind a stone chapel. Minutes later, they were gone. No footprints, no witnesses, no suspects. Just a small town that learned to whisper around an empty place at the table. For 29 years, the mystery gathered dust in attic boxes until a volunteer scanned those old photos and stopped cold. In the corner of one frame, something that shouldn't be there is hiding in plain sight. A tiny detail that begs you to look again. This story returns you to that lawn, the lemonade, the laughter, and the last photograph. What did the camera catch that everyone missed? Where did the boys go between one shutter click and the next? August 15, 1982. Miller's Grove, Vermont. The lawn behind St. Bridget's looks like a quilt. Blankets, paper plates, lemonade sweating in jars. A brass trio tests a hymn near the gazebo. A transistor radio whispers baseball scores. Polaroids pop and hiss. Blueberry pies cool under wax paper. Striped socks flash like little flags. Station wagons click, and we're with tape decks. The air smells of cut grass and church coffee. People still dress for Sunday. Fathers in short sleeves. Mothers with sunglasses. Kids in grass-stained shorts pretending not to be watched. The stone chapel keeps quiet at the edge of the green, slate roof, small bell tower, and tall pointed windows that drink the light. At the heart of it are the Whitman triplets, 13 identical and somehow unmistakable. Evan is the mouth. He is left-handed and counts things when he walks. 3 lampposts, 6 steps, 9 ants. Nate is the maker. He keeps a loop of sisal cord in his pocket and ties knots while talking. Cole hears everything first. He matches bird calls and whistles 3 quick notes when he's nervous. They are one conversation in 3 bodies. Their parents hover just enough. Tom Whitman, stoic from years at the lumber yard, and Martha, who can fix a crooked collar with a touch and carry 2 plates and a worry. Don't go far, she tells them. Stay where I can see your socks. We're a lighthouse, Evan says, pointing to their blue and white stripes. Cole answers with a fast trill. The town moves like a slow parade. Ira Bell, the sacristan, passes with ring of keys like a small weapon. Caleb Morton, the lanky counselor, tosses a baseball and pretends not to notice the girls watching. From the road, a small ice cream truck noses into view. No logo, just peeling white panels and a slow music box tune. Stranger danger, Evan says. Martha taps the back of his head. Be kind, she says, but she watches the truck anyway. Ruth Doyle, who runs a sewing circle and never forgets birthdays, asks the boys to sit for a picture. She has a Polaroid and wants one before they grow. The 3 flop onto a blanket, knees up, shoulders touching, the church behind them. Say maple syrup, Ruth orders. Maple syrup, they echo. The camera coughs out a white square. Ruth waves it until the colors swim to the surface. 3 grins, 3 curls, and the chapel windows rising over their shoulders. By noon, the lemonade needs ice. We'll get it, Evan offers. The cooler is only a dozen steps away by the parish hall. Back in 2 minutes. Tom says, 2. Nate repeats, twisting his cord into a neat clover. Cole trills the cedar waxwing call and salutes. They stand, brush grass from their shins, and cut across the shade toward the parish steps. 2 younger kids, Becky and Owen, remember seeing them near the stone wall where someone had drawn arrows in chalk. 2 lines with a chevron point like a scout sign. Treasure hunt, Becky thought. The triplets laughed at something only they heard and followed the arrows around the corner of the chapel, out of the sun, out of the picture. 2 minutes pass. Then 5. Tom checks his watch and picks up a bag of ice himself. Martha sets plates and looks over her shoulder every time a group of boys shouts. The brass trio starts a hymn. For a moment the crowd stands still, hats off, eyes on the cross. When the music ends, the blanket where the triplets sat is empty. Evan, Martha calls, voice too bright. Nate? Cole, The names land in the grass. No answer. She circles the food tables, the swings, the steps. Tom sets down the ice and joins in. They're around, he says, meaning it and not. In small towns, searching is a skill. People fan out automatically. Behind the rectory, under the bleachers, along the hedge, behind the pickup that always parks crooked. Caleb leads a sweep to the diamond. Ira checks the sacristy with solemn annoyance. Becky tugs her mother's sleeve. They went that way. The arrows. The chalk marks lead past the stone wall to the far side of the chapel, then to the gravel lane. Then nothing. The arrows end at a patch of dust-color flower. By late afternoon, the picnic has turned into a command post. The deputy takes statements. Names become timelines. The Polaroids that felt like toys turn into evidence. Dogs arrive at dusk, noses down, tails tense. They track a scent to the covered bridge at Patterson Road and lose it, then find it again by the drainage culvert behind the church where storm water roars after summer rains. Men and waiters walk the creek with flashlights. The triplet socks are not in the grass. The cooler by the parish hall is still short one bag of ice. Night comes early when you are listening for a voice that does not come. Volunteers keep at it with lanterns. A woman saw a white truck. Someone swears Caleb left for an hour. Someone mentions Ira's keys. Amid the clatter, Martha sits on the steps and folds a napkin into a small square, and then into another until it's a hard little cube. Morning brings state police. Maps go up. The lake is dragged. The bridge is closed. Reporters file stories that read like weather. High pressure, low hope, chance of anything. Tips flood in and evaporate. The ice cream truck sits at the county fair with permits in order. Caleb's alibi is a girl who finally admits she asked him to drive her home. Ira shows his grease-stained notebook from the bell tower clock. His time stamps match. Weeks shrink the search into circles. People go back to work. School begins. Posters fade in the rain. Inside the Whitman house, the radio stays off. Tom cleans and re-cleans the same wrench. Martha starts a box in her closet. Clippings, prayer cards, the church bulletin with the word, "Rejoice she cannot throw away." She places a Polaroid inside, that sunny square where all is intact. Before September ends, a sign appears on the chapel door. Closed 2 days for minor bell tower repairs. Hammers ring, then go quiet. On Sunday, the bell sounds the same, maybe duller. The story stays in Miller's Grove, but learns to whisper. When outsiders ask, the town points to the lake, to the bridge, and lifts its hands. No proof, no footprints, no goodbye. Just 3 empty chairs at the Whitman table, and a photograph that refuses to explain itself. 29 years drift by. Hair grays. Polaroids curl. In the spring of 2011, Ruth Doyle volunteers to scan old church photos. She finds a triplet's picture in a manila envelope. She scans it and watches the image build on the screen. On the monitor, she clicks to enlarge the window behind the boys, the tall, pointed one that always seemed to drink the light. The glass blooms into pixels. Ruth leans closer. Something shifts in the reflection that ought to be still. And on the stone sill there's a chalk mark where there should be none. Her hand hovers. She frowns. HM. The room is quiet enough to hear the scanner fan still spinning. Ruth Doyle does not scare easily, but the window on her screen makes her throat go dry. She prints the scan and calls the library. June? It's Ruth. I need your eyes. June Whitman, 31, knows the sound of trouble in a voice. She bikes over from the town library with her hair still full of paper dust. On the way, she texts the only reporter who never hangs up on her, Gus Halper, Miller's Grove Gazette. They crowd around the church office computer. The cursor blinks over the frozen picnic. Boys on a blanket, chapel behind, some are held like a breath. June leans in. Zoom again. Ruth clicks. Pixels bloom. The ogival window turns into a small lake of glass. In the reflection, where the lawn should ripple, a face rises. Same curls, same grin. But a shirt whose stripes run the wrong way, like a mirror forgetting its job. Gus whistles. A fourth brother? June shakes her head. A reflection from inside. That's the chapel interior catching the light. They were in there. She points lower. And that, do you see it on the sill? A chalk mark. 2 lines with a point like a tiny arrowhead. Sits on the stone. The same sign that Becky remembered years ago. The little treasure hunt arrow the scouts used in town. Ruth scrolls a hair more. There, thin as thread, hangs a loop of cord from the window jamb. It's tied not in a simple loop, but in a neat knot of 3 turns. June's voice softens. Nate's knot. He used to show me that and say it was a clover for luck. Gus looks between the faces and the window, the arrow and the knot. He opens his notebook. Okay, he says, we have 3 messages in one frame. Reflection, arrow, knot. Who wants coffee? They all do. Unfortunately, the parish coffee has been in the pot since before lunch. Gus sips and winces. This coffee died in the service of our country. June, eyes still on the photo, smiles. We survived the 80s. We can survive this. Ruth calls the sheriff's office. Miller's Grove no longer has a full-time sheriff, but his deputy Rosa Montoya, organized, unsentimental, allergic to ghost stories. Rosa arrives with a notepad and the kind of calm that makes people tell the truth. Ruth lays the printout on the table. Rosa listens without blinking, then traces a chalk arrow with her pen. 3 independent details in one window, she says. If this is what you think, the boys left their own trail. I can't tell you it solves anything, June says, but it changes where we look. Rosa nods once. I'm not promising miracles. I am promising a second look. They pull the old box of reports from the closet. June remembers the box from her mother's room, the one that used to make the hallway feel colder. Paper breathes when you open it. Dates, maps with hand-drawn circles. A receipt for a contractor. Minor bell tower repair, August 24th, 1982. No drawings, no photos, just a paid stamp and a signature from a foreman who's now long gone. Rosa's eyebrow climbs. You'd expect pictures, or at least a work order. The 80s, Gus says, big hair, small paperwork. June zooms through microfilm on the library viewer. Town meeting minutes slide by. In September 1982, a cheerful note. Time capsule buried at St. Bridget's lawn during summer picnic. To be open on centennial year 2032. A crude little map shows an X near the oak tree by the east path. Ruth clapped softly. They loved ceremonies. If the boys were leaving signatures, June says, maybe they used the capsule too. Nate would have stuffed a message anywhere you let him. Late afternoon warms the grass when they step outside with a printout of the map. Rosa flags the area with string. Gus shows up with a cheap metal detector borrowed from the hardware store, and to everyone's surprise, it actually beeps. They dig carefully with a short spade until the shovel rings against metal. What they haul up is a dented cylinder capped at both ends and banded with a small brass padlock. The lock is ordinary except for 3 shallow scratches scored across its face. 1, 2, 3, like someone counted out loud while carving. Please tell me you have a key, Gus says. Ruth shakes her head. June looks at Rosa. Rosa looks at the lock, then at the circle of neighbors who have drifted over with phones and folded arms and held breath. We'll log it, Rosa says, and open it by the book. At the station, by the book takes an hour and a careful hand. When the cylinder finally slides free, the room smells briefly of old paper and summer air trapped for almost 3 decades. Inside, there's no program or parish letter. There are 3 things wrapped in wax paper. A cork with a thin cord tied around its middle in the same Trinitarian knot. A small metal whistle, scuffed but bright, and a folded scrap of bulletin paper with 3 words in pencil. Bridge, bell, echo. No names. No dates. Just that. Rosa sits back. That is either a clue or the world's most irritating shopping list. June runs her thumb over the pencil groove. They wrote this. I know the way Evan made his capital E like a trident. She swallows. They were telling us where to listen. News moves fast even in slow towns. By evening, people stand in knots on the lawn. The names return to the air like migrating birds. Caleb Morton and his missing hour. Ira Bell and his ring of keys. The ice cream truck with no logo. Every theory finds a home again for one night. Gus interviews without committing to print. Off the record until Rosa says otherwise. He promises. He also manages a joke about 80s bangs big enough to store clues. June makes a face at him and points at an old yearbook photo of herself. You hush. Rosa keeps the center of gravity. She stacks the findings on her desk. Photo scan, capsule items, receipt for the bell repair, and draws a simple triangle on a notepad. Bridge. Bell. Echo. She tracks the old search maps. The covered bridge on Patterson. The bell tower at St. Bridget's. And echo, what is echo here? The creek under the culvert? The way sound bounces inside the chapel? The signal in the boys' private language? She asks June about the triplets' habits. June tells her about Cole's three-note whistle, Nate's compulsion to tie and retie, Evan's need to count. Rosa writes 3 in a circle next to everything. When she looks up, the room's daylight has turned the color of weak tea. They return to the church lawn at dusk with a folding table, a parish map, and the 3 objects set gently on a cloth. Fireflies start their own conference in the grass. Ruth brings thermoses. Gus brings flashlights, batteries, and better coffee. He sets 1 cup near Rosa. She sniffs it, nods, and drinks like it is policy. Neighbors drift close and then drift away, respectful of the line tape Rosa has set. The chapel stands quiet with a window now an eye. You can almost hear summer 82 if you close your own. June lays the old parish map under a clear sheet and marks the oak, the place where the capsule lay. She measures with her fingers the distance to the covered bridge. It's not far. The creek behind the church curves under the road and runs past the back lot like a dark ribbon. Echo, she says softly, pointing to the drainage tunnel marked on the maintenance schematics. Storm portal number 3. If you shout there in spring floods, the sound comes back like a voice. Rosa follows June's finger, then taps the word bell on the list. Bridge. Bell. Echo. In that order. June looks to Ruth, who looks at the picture, the window's glass still pixelated in her mind. Start where they'd start, Ruth says. On the bridge. The boys love to hang their legs off the rail and spit for distance. Boys do not begin a game in a basement. They begin it where the wind can see them. Gus shrugs into a jacket. You just made that up, he says, and Ruth smiles, guilty as charged. They pack the map, lift the thermoses, and walk toward Patterson Bridge. Night has crested over the fields by the time they reach the wooden mouth of it. The river below whispers in its sleep. Old initials carve in the beam's catch light and release it. Rosa raises a flashlight. I'll file the reopening paperwork in the morning, she says. Tonight, we look and we don't break anything. June clicks her own light, the beam drawing a clean line along the dusty planks. We start with the bridge, she says, the word firm enough to stand on. Gus flicks his light twice and puts fresh batteries in his pocket. All right, gentlemen, ladies, ghost of 1982, he says under his breath. Show us your first move. They step on the bridge together, with answering were beneath their feet, and the darkness ahead opens like a hallway. The flashlights find the center beam. The Patterson Bridge answers like a wooden throat. 1 step, 2, 3, and they're inside a long tunnel of beams and shadow. Their flashlight cones slide along initials carved into uprights, hearts around letters that belong to other summers. Center beam first. Rosa says, look for anything that doesn't belong to wood. Gus crouches and angles his light through the gaps between planks. The day I wore my good jeans, he mutters, then drops to his stomach and shimmies toward the edge where the bridge belly meets the bank. June stays above him, tracking his light with hers, so he doesn't vanish. "See anything?" she asks. "Splinters," Gus reports. One disappointed spider. "Wait, hold on." His beam steadies on something that isn't wood. A frayed, dirt-dark rope looped around a crosspiece on the floor, the tail dangling toward the water. At the loop, someone tied a compact knot of 3 tidy turns. June inhales. "Nate's knot." Gus tugs gently. The rope resists, then gives an inch, as if tethered to something below. "It runs down," he says, "toward the bank, toward the culvert." Rose is already belly down, gloved, reaching. She feels the knot, the roughness, the grain of time in the fibers. "Bag the loop," she says to herself as much as to anyone. Photograph in place, cut below. She clicks a photo with her phone, then uses a small folding blade to sever the rope, leaving the knotted loop intact. Evidence bag. Sharpen. Date. It looks official because it is. "Follow it," June says. They climb down the embankment to the river's whisper. The cut into the rope lies like a line on a map, tracing mud and grass to a concrete mouth set into the bank. Storm portal number 3. A circular drain opening ringed by rusted bars. The rope's free tail disappears through the grate and down into black. Gus peers in, forehead against iron. "I vote we don't go inside the municipal esophagus tonight." "Good," Rosa says, "because you're not." Gus backs up the stand and discovers his backpack has hooked an exposed bolt on the beam above the waterline. He tries to stand again and jerks to a stop, pinned like a beetle. June folds her arms, deadpan. Miller's Grove Gazette reporter found at last. "Do not file this as news," Gus says, twisting uselessly. "I will pay you $5. 10, and you admit the parish coffee is a crime." "Fine. I admit it." June steps down, presses the pack strap, and frees the bolt with a small, smug pop. "You're welcome." Gus, red-eared, makes a serious note about hostile bridges. Rosa kneels at the culvert mouth and shines her light along the curve. The tunnel angles toward the back of the church grounds. "This is your echo," she says. "Storm water comes through here. In a flood, it roars." Boys would have loved the sound. Back up on the bridge, Rosa tapes off the area under the floor with bright ribbon and gives a short speech in her deputy voice. "We'll bring the county in daylight. No one climbs under here alone. And if anyone cuts a new name into this lumber, I will develop a personal hobby of fines." By morning, 2 suspects lose mass. Rosa interviews Caleb Morton with the weary patience of someone who has heard every version of a dumb summer decision. Caleb, now a mechanic with a ring of grease under his nails, stares at his own shoes while his wife, yes, the former secret girlfriend, produces a yellowed note from 1982 in her yearbook, an apology with a time on it, and a gas receipt time-stamped within that missing hour. Embarrassment, not abduction. Rosa checks, rechecks, closes that tab. At the county office, Gus and June chase the ice cream truck. Permits were filed, route logs noted, vendor verified. The truck's owner was hawking pops at a fair 2 towns over the hour in question. "Not our wolf," Gus says, almost disappointed. "People love monsters," June says, sliding the file back, because a monster is a single answer. At the library, June goes hunting for noise. Mr. Pritchard, the old organist, recorded almost everything in 1982. Choir practices, hymn rehearsals, an ambitious attempt at handle. His tapes ended up in a shoebox, labeled with hymns and holidays. June threads cassette marked picnic. Kids choir, August 15th, into the library's battered deck, then juggles an ancient equalizer with sliders like tiny skyscrapers. The tape hisses and spits, then settles into the warm disorder of children singing. She lets it run. At the end, where the choir runs out of words and someone laughs, there's a tiny shift in the room tone. June leans closer, finger on the volume. There are 3 quick notes, high and sure, a small bright whistle. Cole's whistle. Then, faint but unmistakable, 3 short bell peals, not the full toll a sexton pulls for service, but a tug-tug-tug, like a signal. June replays the last 10 seconds 5 times. Ruth, called in from the parish office, stands behind her with a hand over her mouth. Gus, who has accidentally become quiet, watches the level meters wink. Rosa arrives and closes the library door. They all listen. On the 3rd play, Rosa speaks to the air. 3 whistle, 3 bell, same number they carve, same number they circle. She points with her pen. 3. It's a scout code, Ruth says softly. 3 short is distress, but quiet. Not an alarm, just a sign to the ones listening. Sino, June says. They were near the bell, maybe inside the tower. They carry the sound with them back to St. Bridget's like a small flame cupped in hands. The church is empty at mid-afternoon. Rosa unlocks the side door, and the cool of old stone comes at them like a memory. Dust floats where organ notes used to live. They stand at the base of the bell rope, looking up the shaft where the cord disappears into the ceiling. The floor is solid underfoot. Too solid, June thinks. The tape in her pocket feels heavier than it should. Rosa spreads out what plans she can find. Parish maintenance drawings from the 70s, a county inspection map from the 60s. None is exactly the same, and none is a lie, but together they don't quite meet in the middle. On paper, a crawl space. In reality, a wall. On paper, a clean rectangle. In reality, a jog and a foundation where someone got creative. What's that? June asks, pointing at a corner in the basement plans, an unlabeled notch where the line should run straight. Blind spot, Rosa says, or a drafting hangover. They drop into the church basement, which smells of lemon oil and thyme. Metal shelves line one wall, stacked with hymnals with missing spines and boxes of pageant costumes, wise men crowns, cardboard sheep. June's beam crawls over brackets and screws. Something catches her attention not because it shines, but because it doesn't. 4 mounting screws that look newer than the shelf and older than the wall paint around them, heads chewed as if by a driver that slipped in a hurry. She taps one. These aren't original, she says, and whoever installed them was, let's say, motivated. Rosa squints, then runs a finger along the paint where the shelf meets plaster. There's a hairline gap, the kind a room gets when it is holding a secret. Give me a Phillips, she says. Gus, for once, has exactly what is needed, a multi-tool with a screwdriver that has seen better days. Rosa leans in, sets the bit, and turns. The first screw fights, then yields with a small squeal. The second comes easier. June holds the shelf steady while Gus kneels to catch anything that might fall. The third screw drops and ping-pings across the floor like a guilty coin. With the fourth out, the shelf sighs forward. Behind it, the wall is not a wall. It is a panel, the outline just visible in the dust. Low and to the left at ankle height, a seam and a cast iron ring set into a square with like a hatch handle. No way, Gus whispers. Rosa tests the panel. It shifts. June looks at Ruth, then at the ceiling, as if the boys are still listening. Hold on, Rosa says and plants her feet. We do this slow. June reaches the ring. Her fingers close, and for a breath the room holds its breath with her. The iron is cold, as if it has remembered winter for 30 years. She pulls. A seam cracks. Wood complains. From the opening comes air that does not belong to the room. Cool, stale and thin, the kind of air that has been waiting, that has not been breathed by Sunday picnics or choir girls or anyone at all. The hatch yawns like a held breath. Cold air pushes out, thin, stale, the smell of places that keep secrets. June lowers her light and sees what the darkness has been cradling for almost 3 decades. A flashlight from the 80s lies on its side, metal body dulled, orange switch cracked but intact. Next to it, a flathead screwdriver with a chewed handle. Propped against the joist, a scrap upon the size of a ruler, and along its face are 3 parallel cuts, neat and equidistant, as if someone said, "Count this." Rosa photographs everything, then passes evidence bags to Gus. He holds them open like a cautious fisherman. "Careful," Ruth whispers, though nothing in the hatch can hear her. The space beyond is a tight vertical duct boxed in by old framing. At the far edge, their beams find the bell rope, pale and fuzzy with age, sliding up through a narrow chase. Nails step like a ladder up the inside of the shaft, where someone once climbed to oil a pulley. June traces dust with her finger and comes away with a ghost of white. "Chalk," she says softly. "Or limestone. It's on the rope, too." Rosa tests the boards. The framing is sound where she stands, but toward the tower the planks change color. Newer with sistered against old, a seam of correction that doesn't match the original plan she's memorized over the last 24 hours. Back in the office, Rosa calls the county and asks for every scrap with St. Bridget on it. An aide digs through a gray cabinet on speakerphone. Paper rustles like dry grass. "We got a permit pulled August 23rd, 1982. The aide reads, "Emergency stabilization, bell tower floor. Contractor, Patterson and Sons. No photo attachments. Inspected same day. Signed off. Same week as the picnic." Gus says. Rosa writes emergency repair in block letters on a legal pad and underlines it twice. "We need Patterson and Sons." Patterson is closed. Ruth says, "The son moved away. The father passed." "Then we need anyone who worked for them or remembers why you call something emergency in a bell tower." Word finds Tom and Martha before Rosa can. They come to the parish hall together. Tom is bigger than the room can hold and somehow smaller than his own coat. Martha looks like she slept standing up. Rosa shows them nothing gruesome. There isn't anything gruesome to show. She shows the 3 parallel cuts in the wood. She shows the rope dusted with chalk. She says emergency repair like a fact and not a sentence. Tom sits. He puts both hands on his knees, a man bracing for an old wave. "I left for ice," he says to no one in particular. "I left for 10 minutes, and then I left for 10 years by accident." He laughs once, a dry thing. Floor gives way. Kids go where gravity says. "That's it, isn't it?" Martha turns to him, sharp, tender. "Thomas." Rosa keeps her voice careful. "We don't know yet. We know the floor was changed a week after. We know the boys signaled from near the rope. We know they left messages." June hears a word the way a tuning fork hears a note. "Messages," she repeats. "The chalk arrows. The knot. The 3 cuts." She looks back at Tom. If it was only an accident, why leave a coded trail? Why tie Nate's knot and mark 3s and point to the bridge? Tom looks at the floor as if answers could leak up through it. His jaw works. He nods without agreeing. Rosa lets the room be quiet an honest amount of time. They talk to Ira Bell, the sacristan, that afternoon. He arrives with keys that look lighter than they did in 1982. Rosa asks him about access that summer, about who could get to the tower, about what he fixed when. He answers like a man paging through a well-kept ledger in his head. The week after the picnic, he says, "The clock went jumpy. Minute hand jittered at the 12. Mechanic said the floor joist had a belly to it, not true level. I let the men in, and I stood at the door while they worked. They hammered. They sistered boards. They varnished over the bright, but so it looked old. That's all. Anyone with them?" Rosa asks. "Just the 2, he says. They left sawdust like snow." He shows her a thin notebook where he notes the time he wound the clock every Sunday, and on August 24th, 1982, there's a smear of dark where his pencil caught grease from a gear. He looks embarrassed by the smudge. Gus, who wants a villain like any storyteller, looks at Ira's hands, clean, tremoring slightly, and lets the idea of him go. "We have a floor repaired," Rosa says when Ira leaves. "We have boys making 3s. We do not have anyone with a bad heart in the room." June thinks of the box in her mother's closet. She bikes to the Whitman house and knocks twice, and then once. Cole's pattern. Martha opens with a tired smile that says she noticed. In the living room, June sets the notebook on the coffee table, a spiral-bound guide her grandfather kept with drawings of loops and hitches. They page through until they reach the dog-eared corner where the Trinitarian knot should be. The page is missing, carefully torn. "I meant to tell you," Martha says, and the words carry both apology and relief. Nate copied that page. He said it was his signature. He'd tie it to his backpack, his bike. Anything he wanted to say was his. "I found his copy under his mattress the week after. I kept it." She goes to a drawer and returns with a folded paper greasy from hands. On it, a bright boy's pencil has traced the knot 3 times, arrows showing the turns, a small E in the corner that looks like a trident. June lays Nate's drawing next to the photo of the knot hanging from the window jamb in 1982. Exact. It feels like shaking hands across time. Back at the church office, they start drawing lines. Bridge bell. Echo sits at the top of a whiteboard. Under it, Rosa maps the creek. The storm portal number 3 behind the chapel makes a straight, underground run to the culvert beneath Patterson Road, then slides toward the Blackberry Lake wetlands. In spring and after thunderstorms, water pitches through like a freight train. If you were a kid, Gus says, and you wanted to scare your friends during a picnic, you'd sneak into the tower, tug the bell, make 3 little peals, then run to bridge to listen to your own echo. And if the floor near the rope gave way, Rosa says, tapping the repaired seam on her drawing, you'd either drop into chase or scramble for another way, down to the maintenance opening or toward the drain. June studies a loop of line from tower to culvert and back to bridge with librarian's patience. They were building a circle, she says. Bridge to bell to echo to bridge. Boys don't resist loops. The false ending sneaks into the room then. Simple, heavy, tempting. They fell. The men fixed the floor, none the wiser. End of sentence. Tom's version. The one you can live with if you have to. June refuses it like a door selling nothing. If they fell and that was that, there is no arrow on a sill, no knot at a jam, no 3 cuts on a board. No whistle on a tape, she says. They were signaling, which means time, which means they moved. Rosa nods once, grateful for someone else to carry the bright edge of hope. Then we follow the circle where it starts. She looks at Ruth. You said the boys like to play a game at the bridge. Ruth smiles a sad smile. 3 echoes. You stand at the middle plank. You knock 3 times, and you wait for the bell to answer. The sum of the creek ran high. You could feel it in your knees. Let's test it, June says. Night finds them back at Patterson Bridge. The river a ribbon of ink and the fields beyond breathing crickets. Their flashlights pick up old gum. Initials gnawed with pocket knives. A heart around a plus B that has outlasted the marriage. June steps to the center plank because every game they played as kids started there. She crouches and lays her palm on the wood. It is warm from the day, and she can feel the slow pulse of the water below. Gus raises his phone to record, then lowers it. Do it first, he says. Proof can come after. Rosa stands with her light trained under the rail. Ruth closes her eyes and listens with the part of her heart that has been listening since 1982. June makes a fist and taps the plank 3 times. Not hard, not soft, just the way kids do when they expect an answer. 1, 2, 3, for a breath. Nothing. Then something metallic answers from deep in the wood. Not the bell in the tower, but a small, bright tremor, a hidden rattle tucked under the bridge, as if a jar lid or a tin corner vibrates to the rhythm of her knock. They look at each other, their eyes the same shade of astonishment, and then all the lights angle down together, beams crossing like the hands of a clock pointing at the same second. The wood hums once more, a shy second syllable. The second hum isn't a sound so much as a feeling, like a coin quivering on a tabletop. June drops to her knees and sweeps her beam along the underside of the center plank. Rosa kneels beside her, shoulder to shoulder, light carving triangles under the bridge. There, June says, tucked against a joist, half hidden by a rib of wood. Something dull and square trembles when the plank is tapped. A metal box, about the size of a lunch tin, is tethered by a thin wire that runs up through a nail hole. The wire ends in a small loop tied neat as a signature. 3 even turns, the Trinitarian knot. "Nate," June whispers. Rosa works methodically. Photos first. Angles. Close-ups of the knot. Then she wedges a flat bar under the edge of the board and eases it up a hair. The wire sighs. The box shifts. Gus, balancing like a tightrope walker, reaches in with 2 fingers and carefully guides it free. "Gus," Rosa says, "if you drop that, I take your press badge and your birthday." "Ma'am," he says, "I was born for this box." He wasn't, but he does fine. The tin comes out cold and damp, edges feathered with rust. Rosa sets it on a folded jacket, snaps a last photo, and looks at June. "You ready?" June nods, but her hands don't trust themselves. Rosa fits her multi-tool into the bent clasp and levers. A quiet pop and the lid lifts. Inside is paper, packed tight and trimmed into tiny rectangles, like someone fed a bullet into a stubborn pair of scissors. Each piece bears a fragment, half a hymn title, a sliver of a date, the letter be paired with R.I. or E with C.H. They smell faintly of lemon oil in August. Beneath the confetti lies a Polaroid wrapped in wax paper. Rosa peels the paper back as if she is unwrapping a body. The white frame holds color that hasn't seen light in 30 years. 3 boys look out: Evan, Nate, Cole. Their faces are damp with sweat and mischief. Behind them is not the lawn, but the inside of the bell tower, rough boards and the long throw of rope rising out of frame. The boys are pointing. All 3 index fingers line up on the same thing, a fresh patch of wall. The wood brighter, the joinery crude, the varnish still glossing. And on that bright board, scrawled with something black, charcoal maybe, is a message in block letters. "Do not seal. We are here. SOS. No one speaks for a heartbeat too long." Then June's breath breaks. Gus mutters something that isn't a word. Rosa holds a photo between her palms, afraid it might vanish. "Date." Ruth says suddenly, her voice too loud in the hush. "Turn it. The bottom." Rosa flips the frame. In the faint gray of Polaroid chemistry, the machine has stamped a date, August 15th, 82, the day of the picnic. They call Tom and Martha. He arrives in his old work jacket, though it's warm. She has the look of someone who forgot to blink for an hour. Rosa lays the Polaroid on a clean cloth and steps back. Martha touches only the corner of the frame, as if the image might tear. She takes in the faces. Evan's chin up like he's telling a joke. Nate's cord looped in his fist, Cole's mouth about to whistle. When she reaches a message on the board, her fingers tremble. She presses her other hand flat to quiet the tremor and fails. Tom leans down and then further, as if closeness could make time run backward. The old man who used to carry entire windows by himself makes a sound like a rope fraying. "They were alive," he says, not looking up. "They were right there. They told us." June's palm finds Martha's shoulder. Martha nods once, eyes swimming, and blinks like a person wading to a shore. Rosa's voice is gentle, but built for work. "This is enough for a judge," she says. The base of the tower was altered the week after. The boys signaled. They left a dated photograph of a sealed section. "We need an order to open that section." Gus pulls in a long breath. "If I write this, it lights the county on fire," he says. "But we don't publish until you swing." "Deal." Rosa studies him for the length of decision. "Deal," she says. "You will also spell my name right." Gus raises a hand. "Montoya with a Y. I have learned." They leave Tom and Martha at the parish hall with Ruth and return to the office. Rosa drafts the affidavit with the prosecutor on speaker. June reads a Polaroid again and again, as if a second sentence might appear. She lines the tiny cuttings on a sheet of paper, trying to make words with halves. BRI, DGB, LLEC, HO. The boys game spelled and respelled by scissors. It is childish and sharp at once. Gus paces. "What's your best guess?" he asks June. "Say out loud. From the first arrow to that wall." June lets the film in her head roll. Her voice is steady because the reel is steady. "They start at the lawn," she says. "They make the arrow on the sill so someone will notice later. They sneak inside, climb the maintenance ladder to the platform by the rope. They ring 3 short peals, that whistle and bell on the tape. They plan to run back to the bridge to hear their echo and spring the scare on their friends." Rosa nods along, and then the floor near the rope gives. It's been weakened. The men will call it an emergency later. One boy slips. The others brace him, haul him, tie a loop, Nate's knot, to anchor him. They recognize a cavity behind the panel. Somebody has cut boards before. The boys squeeze through, hide there, regroup. June taps the photo. They write the message. They point so the camera tells any adult exactly where to look. They stash this in the bridge game secret spot because it's where the echo lives. If they don't make it, the echo does. Gus is still, which is how you know he is listening. He nods. It fits like teeth. The judge is in chambers late. Friday night, a stack of warrants, a baseball game on a low radio, rows of faxes, then drives 2 blocks because this town still works faster face-to-face. June and Gus wait in the corridor, looking like they are in line for a bad ride. Rosa returns with the paper, a clean blue stamp pressing the county seal into the corner. "Signed," she says simply. Back at St. Bridget's, the basement becomes a stage. They run extension cords. They aim work lights until the cement floor shines. Rosa unwraps a sledgehammer that looks theatrical in this sacred space. A small argument breaks out over who gets the first swing. "I found the hatch," June says. "I kept you from strangling yourself in your backpack." Gus says, "I am the officer of the law." Rosa says, "and that settles it." Humor peeks through and then folds its hands. Ruth sets folding chairs for Tom and Martha at a respectful distance, but neither can sit. They stand together like a tree with 2 trunks. Rosa strides to the wall that should not be a wall, the bright patch in the Polaroid rendered dull by time. She touches the plaster with the back of her hand. Cold, June steps up and lays a hand over Rosa's. "Once we go through," June says, voice small and plain, "the story won't come back." Rosa meets her eyes. "Good," she says softly. "Let it go where it has to." The room holds itself very still. Even the lights seem to quiet. Rosa lifts the sledge, breathes, and swings. The first blow lands with a deep, stubborn crack. Plaster splits, a line running jagged from shoulder height to the baseboard like a lightning bolt, finally choosing a tree. Dust rises in a soft explosion. Old summer and old wood riding the air. Someone coughs. Someone cries out without meaning to. Rosa resets her stance. The crack widens, the bright wound knocking pale crumbs onto the concrete. The second swing lands, and the wall finally decides to be honest. Plaster peels in fist-sized shells. A rib of new which shows its pale belly. Rosa steps back, coughs, swings again. With the third hit, the patch gives up. A square of the past falls inward, and a draft washes the room. Cool, old, like cupboards that haven't been opened since someone moved away. Behind the false face are not bones or villains. There are 2 spaces. The first is a narrow compartment, wrist to shoulder deep, just wide enough for 3 boys to sit. Rope ends sleep in a tangle there, one tied in a clean 3-turn knot that belonged to Nate. 2 lemonade cans lie dented on their sides, labels faded to ghost colors. In the dust, someone drew 3 short hatch marks and then, next to them, erased half of the heel of a hand. The boards are scuffed where heels pressed. Beyond that pocket, a darker mouth yawns. The duct itself, a throat box with timber where the bell rope runs up. At the base of the shaft, an iron grate guards a maintenance opening to the storm drain. On its rusted teeth something winks and then holds still. June kneels. She reaches carefully with gloved fingers and frees a thin strip of fabric, blue and white thread bound, the same narrow stripe as the boy's Sunday socks. Caught like a flag on a nail, tucked against the grate's lower bar is a metal whistle, wedged sideways and furred with orange. Rosa photographs it, then lifts it free with tweezers. When she taps the whistle once against her palm, it answers a room with a single, breathless chime. No one moves. Then Martha's hand finds Tom's. He grips back hard. The fire department arrives with measured boots. Captain Rourke listens to Rosa, studies the shaft, and shakes his head. "Nobody goes down from here," he says. We follow it from the outside. At dawn, at the covert behind the church, they open a rusted access plate and feed a waterproof camera into the drain. On the screen, the inside world skids by joints grit, a scrap of ribbon, runoff and grit. The pipe tilts and runs under Patterson Road, then settles into a long, straight slide toward the creek that eventually empties into Blackberry Lake. At mid-morning, the county team brings a side-scan sonar skiff to the lake. They quarter a quiet cove where the creek mouths out, fan the beam, and watch the bottom turn into topography. After a few passes, a shape appears. An odd mound in the silt, not rock, not stump, a soft hill where the current tucks its secrets. On the screen, bright flecks hide in the hill, reflective and wrong for mud. Divers work slow. The lake is friendly to ducks and hell on visibility. They bring up a lantern body with its glass gone, but its orange switch familiar, and a penny dark as coffee that, under a thumb rub, gives up 1982. Nothing cruel surfaces, only the stubborn fact of things that fell and stayed. Back on shore, the rescue chief talks like a man who has learned to place words exactly. He points to the pipe diagram, to the lip of the creek, to the storm record from that Sunday. Late afternoon, he says. Upstream, cells echoed off the ridge. A surge ran through these drains like a lung exhaling. Anything in the maintenance throat would have felt a hand pull. You can think of it as suction, its pressure head and timing. The chief explains, the drop at the culvert speed the water. When the lake dips after heat, the system pulls harder. Small things in the throat don't get a choice. Science and memory agree. The route under town, the metal, the cloth, the date. There's a silence made of math and grief. By lunchtime, Rosa has done what she came to do for the living. She closes files without closing hearts. Caleb Morton is clear by timestamp and truth. He was late for love, not lost in malice. Ira Bell returns to his clock with a release in his shoulders. His notebooks are boring in the best way. The ice cream truck settles into the ledger with receipts and routes that prove it belonged to another town's joy. What remains is the shape of a day and the way choices line up. 3 boys make a game that reads bridge, bell, echo, a floor that should have been firm wasn't, a drain that usually gossips took a breath at the wrong minute. No kidnappers, no vans, no monster except bad carpentry, and water looking for lower ground. That afternoon, the parish hall fills with neighbors who learn the boys' names before they learn cursive. The Polaroid sits in its soft bed of tissue where anyone who needs it can look and be looked at by 3 children who are trying to be clever. Tom asks for a minute and takes 2. He stands with his cap crushed in his hands. "I looked for a stranger to blame and found me," he says, voice ragged and clear. "I walked to get ice. If I had stayed, maybe I'd have seen the arrow, or heard the bell." He swallows hard. "Today the water tells me the truth I didn't want, and I'm going to carry that truth, but I'm done blaming the man who needed 10 minutes. I forgive him." Martha's palm presses his back like a roof. At sunset, the town climbs the hill to the chapel. The bell rope hangs ready, and new candles stare from windows. Rosa says a few words that fit the size of the place and the people in it. Ruth, who started the looking again, reads a short verse. Then the rope is past the hands that have known it most of their lives. The bell peals 3 short notes. Not funeral, not fate, just what the boys sent across the summer. The sound schemes the grass, clips the bridge, and returns to the culvert with a faint answering echo, as if the game has agreed to end. Martha steps forward with the Polaroid and gives it back to the church. "It belongs where it can be seen," she says. The parish frames it near the door under a brass plate that reads, "We are here." The photo faces a lawn and the window whose reflection kept a secret for decades. On the steps, June and Gus sit with their shoulders touching like bookends. 3 signs. June says, "The arrow, the knot, the number." They were looking at us the whole time, and we didn't know how to look back. Gus nods, eyes on the tower. We looked everywhere but under our feet. They walk home the slow way, past the bridge where something small once hummed, past the culvert where the water keeps its own counsel. The town is not fixed, but it is truer. For the last shot, we return to the original photo, the boys on the blanket, the chapel behind, the window drinking light. Now, we know what it was saying. Come inside, follow the marks, listen. The camera holds on the glass as if it might bloom again with the face that started it. If you are watching this, you probably have a shoebox somewhere, a picture that has never been asked a second question. Look again. Zoom in. A corner of a frame might be tugging at your sleeve. Listen. The bell gives 3 small notes. The bridge waits a breath and answers. The window keeps the last of the day and lets it go.